How is it going, everyone? Welcome to the channel. I keep seeing questions about how to get max absolutism in both YouTube and Reddit. There are actually a few good guides on how to do it, but I decided to make one that is easier to follow for newer EU4 players. Getting max absolutism requires you to fire the court and country disaster, which isn't really a beginner level mechanic. However, getting that extra absolutism is so overpowered late game that even beginner level players should do it when playing an expansionist game using bigger nations. So let's hop right into it. You can increase absolutism by strengthening government, increasing stability, lowering autonomy, and harsh treatments. But you will be capped at 50 to 80 absolutism depending on your nation. And in order to increase the max cap, you need to fire the court and country disaster. So let's see how we can achieve that. To fire the court and country disaster, you need to have at least +1 unrest, less than +3 stability, be at war, and have 50 absolutism. Now you can get the first 3 done fairly easily. So let's work on getting that 50 absolutism in a short time. You need to start preparing when Age of Reformation is winding down. The day Age of Absolutism hits, make sure you are not at war, not seriously lacking on manpower or money, and have at least 500 admin, 500 diplo, and close to maximum amount of military points. Next, you should place a stack of army close to a remote nation, either in the New World or far enough away that other nations don't care about them. We will use lowering autonomy as our main approach to raise the absolutism. First step is to increase unrest. This can be done by lowering stability, increasing war exhaustion, and firing a theologian if you have one. You can lower stability by breaking royal marriages, or if you have exploration or expansion ideas, changing your native policy repeatedly. Get to -3 stability. Now you need to find particularists and noble rebels on your rebel screen. Sometimes just getting -3 stab isn't enough to get these rebels. This might be because you have some other negative unrest modifiers. So in case you don't see enough particularists and noble rebels, you need to get more unrest by increasing your war exhaustion. We do this by no CBing a nation. Ideally, this would be an isolated nation. When you no CB war someone, you get reduced stab and some serious war exhaustion. This should be more than enough to get the rebels. Next, accept demands from the particularist and the noble rebels if they are present in many provinces. Don't accept demands from noble rebels if they are only in 3 or 4 provinces. It's not worth it. When you accept demands, it increases autonomy in all provinces these rebels are present. Next, in order to get some absolutism going, you need to lower autonomy manually in all these provinces. However, you can't lower autonomy when you're at war, so white peace your enemy as quickly as possible. Now lower autonomy in all possible provinces. This should give you close to 50 absolutism. If you aren't quite there yet, use the strengthening government or harsh treatment to get to 50 absolutism. Now you can stop here and just be at 50 to 60 absolutism, which isn't bad, but in my opinion, you should look to fire the disaster to increase your max absolutism. Now that we have 50 absolutism and we already have the other criteria fulfilled, in order to fire the court and country disaster, we need to be at war again. So since you already have a remote nation, you're just going to no CB them again. Increase your stab to -2 and no CB again. The game doesn't allow you to declare wars when you're at -3 stab. Now buy down war exhaustion until you're just above +1 unrest. This disaster takes about 3 years to fire, so you'll just have to wait around. Siege down the enemy provinces in the meantime. Once the disaster fires, you can increase your stab, buy down war exhaustion, and end your war. The disaster lasts for 10 years. make a note of when the disaster started. The disaster will spawn multiple rebel stacks in your stated provinces, so make sure you have stacks of armies spread out in your nation. Try to choose the plus absolutism option on events whenever possible. However, some events will give you multiple rebel stacks for just +5 absolutism, so it's okay to choose the other option sometimes. The rebels spawn more frequently in the first 3 years or so. After the first few years, you can start conquering some other minor targets, so you're not just sitting around waiting for the disaster to end. Once the disaster ends, you will either get +20, +10, or -10 max absolutism depending on how much absolutism you have at that time. Make sure you are at max absolutism when the 10-year mark hits. That's why you need to make a note of when the disaster started. You can get the extra +5 max absolutism by starting a golden age. You can keep increasing your absolutism to get to max by methods I mentioned earlier. You can also choose the age ability to get +1 yearly absolutism. You should hit the max absolutism in few years. You might also get 10 or so stacks of 50 to 60k rebels at some point after the disaster, so be prepared for that. And that's the end of this short tutorial. It might sound like a lot, but really it isn't that much of an issue. Also, as you can see, you waste quite a lot of admin and diplo points here, which can be avoided, but at the cost of time. This tutorial will get you to max absolutism faster than any other tactic. You can take it slow as well if you don't want to waste hundreds of admin and diplo points, but in the long run those points won't matter much. Some of you might wonder if wasting 10 to 15 years on this disaster is worth getting just +10 or +20 max absolutism. I can tell you that it is. The extra absolutism combined with core cost reduction modifiers and province cost reduction modifiers will mean that you can take huge areas of land late game, finishing large nations in just 1 or 2 wars. I think firing the code and country disaster is better for some countries than others, and it's not really a must-have if you don't plan on going full expansionist. Nonetheless, it's a fun little mechanic. I hope this step-by-step guide helps newer players in getting ever so close to world conquest. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.